Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Ball and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On our show here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all our different coaches, experts and guests their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. Our guest today is Stuart Sandeman. He is the founder of BreathPod, which is a business focusing on breathwork for improving both physical health but also mental health. I had an outstanding conversation with Stuart about how he goes about doing that through his business, through his functional events and workshops. His clients at BreathPod include the likes of Google, Nike, Adidas, Lululemon, Virgin Money, Converse, Amiga, Calvin Klein, and many, many, many more. I hope you guys enjoy this, enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed talking to him. And as always, please like, share, subscribe wherever you can. Check Stuart out at BreathPod on Instagram, and also give us a check out as well at Wellness Academy Social. And yeah, enjoy. So Stuart, welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast. Thank you very, very much, as I said, for being with us today. Before I get cracking, I've noticed you sipping whatever that is. It looks very interesting. What on earth are you drinking?
I've actually been feeling a little bit under the weather. And this is ginger, grated, boiled for 45 minutes. And then the water that is boiled in with the ginger goes in the cup with a bit of honey. And yeah, it's an instant cold buster. Okay.
Is it quite potent?
Like it's when really potent. That,
yeah, I imagine.
I'm quite used to it now, but when other people try it, they're like, "Woohoo, that's pretty punchy."
Yeah.
But it really helps through winter. Like I said, I had a bit of a cold just yesterday. Really, it came on. I was up in Scotland where my mum and dad were both ill with the cold, and I think I picked up a bug. And usually I'm pretty good. But yesterday I went turbo health, made a big batch of ginger, and today I'm feeling back on track. So I'm still sipping away at it.
Brilliant. Touch wood, like you, I'm normally pretty good. But if I do get something, it's a cold. So next time round, when I'm sure I end up with one, probably now, out of the law of attraction, I'll get one. Now that said, I don't get them. I'll be on the ginger like you. So, Stuart, I was hoping to begin with, you could just give us a little bit of background. I've obviously been, I've been following you for a little while now regarding your BreathPod Instagram account. Came across you after we interviewed, as I said, a guy, Richie Norton. You've done some collaborative work with him. But I'm curious as to what your background is and how you got into what it is that you do now. And then you can give us a bit of detail about exactly what it is that you do and what you offer and how you offer it and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this could probably take up the whole podcast, maybe a full background. I run a company called BreathPod. So I work with all kind of walks of life, using the breath as a tool to change the way we feel, think, act, operate, perform, perceive, all these different things. So I work with different groups, people on one-to-one individual basis, and then also work with corporates and peak-performing athletes as well. So a big range of stuff. How I got into this? Well, I think there's a journey towards this. It's the last thing I thought I'd be doing was teaching people to breathe or using the breath as a tool. I even sometimes pinch myself that I'm doing this work now. It's bizarre, but amazing. It's such rewarding work. But in terms of performance or health, I'd always been very kind of health conscious. I did a lot of judo when I was growing up. That was my sport. From 4 years old, I was on a judo mat.
My job is to teach karate and kickboxing.
Well, there you go. Sweet. Well, that was my job for a while on judo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Great. Yeah, so it was a martial arts background, and that was, I had posters on my wall of judo players and was...
Did you compete?
I competed, yeah. I was Scottish champion for many, many years. I actually left school to pursue a full-time career in judo.
Wow.
But I got injured quite early on that kind of road to the Olympics. And came out of a bit of a pinnacle age, got kind of injured, slipped the disc in my back around about 18, had to take some time off, went to travel Europe, ended up in Ibiza for 3 months. So different type of training, as you imagine. And I kind of got back into judo. I went to university after that and started teaching judo for the university team, and still had this. I was still training and got into other kind of martial arts at uni, and was looking at that side of things. But then I went off and I did maths at uni, so it kind of took me down this different path in terms of academia.
Okay.
Left university, moved to London, worked in finance. So it's kind of jumped ship a little bit. I moved to finance, and when I worked in finance, I was making a lot of music and DJing at weekends, my kind of escape, and living a very much a kind of detox kind of lifestyle. I think many people might relate to that. Does
the name Max Lowry ring any bells to you?
Max who? Lowry. Yes, it does.
So I just interviewed him last week, and it was quite funny. What you've just said. If you exchange martial arts and other county sports, you and him have done that. It's really weird. Really weird. That's so funny. But yes, okay, sorry, carry on. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, not at all. So it kind of came from this very sporty background, moved to uni, did maths, moved to London, worked in finance, kind of went into the corporate wheel, and worked, kind of live hard, play hard, kind of work hard, play hard kind of lifestyle in that corporate space, and then doing events at weekends, music, partying a bit too much. Actually moved over to Hong Kong with my job. And when I moved over, music that I'd made got signed by some record deals, some record labels, and it sent me on this wild mystery tour of a lifestyle as a DJ. So I basically, when I started getting different requests for my music when I was working finance in Hong Kong, I decided, well, maybe I should be giving my music a chance. And then what the catalyst for that was a big tsunami in Japan. And I was working out of Hong Kong, but I worked Japanese markets, and I had to fly to Japan to see my clients after that. You might remember the big Fukushima disaster. Yeah. And I went out there, and there was 2 massive earthquakes when I was there, 8.2 and a 5.6, I think. And it shook me up. Excuse the pun, but yeah, I had that moment of, what am I doing? My life is quite short. Why am I not doing my music when that's really my passion and what I want to do? So I left Japan, went back to work, and I handed my notice in to concentrate on music. So I had a kind of year off, but it all kind of kicked off. I started touring the world, playing most festivals and nightclubs all over the place.
Wow.
You're probably wondering, well, how the hell am I teaching people to breathe?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, the switch into this work, I mean, wasn't as pleasant ride. It was my girlfriend at the time was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. So as you can imagine, it puts the brakes on what you're doing, and for me, I ignited that judo player. How do we beat this thing? Looked at everything we could get our hands on, conventional treatments, alternative medicine, weird and wonderful practices that we could find, and sadly she didn't make it. She did pass away. What I didn't find through that whole time was breath work. But I did touch on it a little bit through meditation practices. A bit of the Wim Hof stuff was out by then. I was looking at that, but I didn't give it airtime because at that stage we were in a bit more of a not a desperate state, but it was terminal, and we were thinking, right, we need to really, what else is out there?
I imagine breathwork probably didn't sound like it was going to make the difference, like, because I reckon there's probably people I've come across breathwork through. I think probably it went Tim Ferriss, Kelly Starrett. Kelly Starrett's good friends with Brian McKenzie. Yeah. Brian McKenzie was on a podcast a little while ago when I was looking into starting this and wanted some inspiration about format and blah blah blah. Listened to that and then bought the Art of Breath online course, followed through and completed that, became aware of this whole idea of CO2 tolerance. And when I first tried the CO2 tolerance test, it was like 22 seconds. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. And blah, 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 blah. But you go, but I breathe every day. What do you mean breath work? Like, how can you teach me to breathe? I breathe anyway. But I heard the words, if you sleep with your mouth open, it's an indication of a problem. And I'm like, oh, even now I still sleep with my mouth open, even though I've improved certain areas. Like, I still find it very, very difficult to wake up in the morning not feeling revolting because I've slept the whole night, probably like this. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so I came across it and probably thought the same thing as you guys. It's just, what do you mean breath work? I imagine that was where you guys went with it.
Yeah. Well, there was a key point in that trip, and there probably was breathworkers there. I went to the Alternative Cancer Convention in San Diego.
Okay.
And
wow.
And at that time, I was like, wow, this is. I'd always been quite sciencey, and the Alternative Cancer Convention in San Diego, you can imagine, was pretty out there. Just laugh through cancer.
What was the weirdest thing you said? Go on then, yeah.
There was just everything that now I believe in. I'm like, wow, I should have listened. There's laughter therapists saying we can just laugh through cancer, and I'm like, no, right, this is. And there probably was breath workers there saying that do some certain holotropic breathing or rebirthing or all these different breath practices that probably would have made a difference. But I was like, right, this is too much. Let's speak to a real doctor.
Yeah.
But I think it was, for me, my door into breath work was this personal journey through grief. Initially, I took my mum as a yoga instructor, and after when Tiff passed away, I moved back to Scotland, where I'm from, and wasn't sure on my next step. I'd fallen out of love with my music. I was in just in a heavy headspace, as you can imagine, where I was grieving, and didn't want to see a therapist. I thought, no, I'm fine. I'll deal with it. I've got this. Although I probably should have spoke to somebody, but I didn't. I was in such a headspace. I thought, well, what are they going to do? They weren't there in the hospital. They're just going to ask me questions. That's what they're trained to do. I'd gone into this I was quite angry with the world and just going through all these different levels of grief. And all that happened was a breathing workshop, transformational breath, popped up online. And it was around about Mother's Day, and I bought a ticket for my mum for Mother's Day. That's as far as I thought. So we went along together, and it was that was life changing. It was really powerful and potent and a bit messy, because it was
Did it bring up a lot of stuff?
A lot of stuff. Yeah. A lot of stuff. Firstly, I felt that first session, I thought either I'm going mad, because I had a kind of out of body experience. I felt like my girlfriend was there holding my hand. I bawled my eyes out. I thought, right, either someone spiked my drink before going in, or I've lost the plot, or something happened there that is worth exploring. So the intriguement got the better of me, and I thought, right, well, what is this? I had so many questions for the.
How old were you at this point? Sorry, Stuart.
So I always forget how old I am. That's I must have been about 34, 35.
How old are you now?
I'm 36 now.
Wow. Okay. You don't look 36, but okay.
It's the ginger juice. And the breath work.
Where's my ginger?
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, so I don't know, I need to actually figure that out when that actually was. But so I just dived deep into this practice. I thought, well, what's going on here? Is this real? Is this my imagination? What else are people experiencing? And wow, this is making me feel better. That was the crux of it. Whatever it is, it's working, and it was allowing me to go into this space. I guess the space that therapy goes without having to speak, which was a big tick a box for me. Yeah. And then analyzing it further. Well, was this allowing me to feel my grief and feel my emotion? What was happening in these sessions to create this safe space for me to actually feel? And why was the breath doing this? And then peeling back the onion layers to say, well, why wasn't I feeling emotion? Because I didn't cry through that whole journey of cancer. I was the pillar of support. I was there for everyone else. Even when she passed away, her funeral and everything, I was kind of there, solid, the big boy that doesn't cry, the martial artist. It all kind of paints this picture of, well, how was I dealing with emotion? Was I just hiding away from it? Which ultimately I was, which maybe a lot of men do. Mm-hmm. Like I said, that the big boys don't cry, and I didn't allow myself to feel in that space. I felt in other ways, anger, frustration. So yeah, that was this step into breath. And at the same time as that happening, you mentioned Mindful Talent. Mindful Talent is a coaching business that one of my best mates, Ali, launched. Okay. Round about the similar time to when I'd moved back to Scotland. And we're best mates, and he was kind of through this whole journey with me. And at the time I thought, all right, I might go back to finance. I'd spent all my savings and more. I'd kind of fallen out of love that music space. I felt like it was just late nights and partying, and I just felt a bit disconnected from that. So Ali, when I sat with him, said, I said, oh, I'm going to go back to finance. And he was like, do you really want to do that? Why don't you help me launch this business? So again, I kind of jumped in and started working with Ali, launching this coaching business, which was working in that space that I now work with BreathPod as well. So working in this kind of corporate space on a one-to-one client level. I started working with artists and musicians initially, doing coaching work. And breath was just this like secret fight club that I was going to, doing this kind of esoteric circle. That's where cool. I could have a little sob and a cry and not tell anybody that I was doing this amazing thing. Okay. Until I started coaching, and I thought, wow, this person needs to stop talking and they need to go and breathe, and they need to go and do the breathing work that I've been doing. But at the same time, I was really diving deep with breath, looking at other breath practices too. What else is out there? Doing the Wim Hof stuff and looking at rebirthing and holotropic breath work and then functional pranayama, Kundalini yoga. What is out there from a respiratory consultant perspective? What did the doctors say with breath? And went off and did a load of training, a lot of different training in different modalities, and then there's link with when I was doing coaching work, thinking, right, this person just needs to breathe, and then we can come back to talking about where they want to go or what they want to do. So it worked really quite seamlessly in this kind of coaching and breathwork space. And BreathPod launched initially as this space to do breathing workshops, but as traction formed with that business, it's kind of taking its form, and I'm still a director at Mindful Talent, still working there, but mainly doing breath work through BreathPod now. So what is BreathPod? BreathPod is a business. We're basically working with groups, individuals, businesses, teaching ways to harness the power of our breathing for different effects, basically. Do you have an actual? Because I looked through some of your Instagram in kind of preparation for talking today, and it did give me some inspiration about things to talk about and ask you and so on and so forth. But I do also like it to be like a surprise. Like I like to have genuine conversation with people on the podcast where I don't do too much research and it's not pre-programmed. Like I had no idea all of that you were going to say. Like I didn't ask you for this huge bio that you wrote down before we talked and so on. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But is it an actual pod that you have people sit in? Because you've got some pictures on your Instagram that looks like what it is. Yeah. So it's funny. The BreathPod name came just as a moment, one of those in the shower moments of inspiration. That's what I want to call it. And it was for me this merge of breath and sound. So BreathPod, iPod. That's where the way I was going with it, because I thought, well, one thing I didn't like about the practices that I was doing was the music that was being played. So I was like, right, well, that's my bag. I've been a DJ producer. Let's make some music for the practice, which is what I've been doing. And let's create this sound space that is cool and vibey and interesting to take place while people do these breath sessions. So that was where the name came from. The pods were kind of, I thought, oh, well, maybe I could have a pod at some point. And I kind of parked the idea until about this time last year. And a brand came and asked me they said, can we put your breath pods in our store, Brown's East store? And I was like, oh, yes, yeah, that's great. Thinking, I don't have a pod. What's the pod? One of those. Yeah, great. Yeah, we'll put the breath pod in, no problem. And we worked with them to build a room within a room that was this immersive experience. And I say I teamed up with a good friend of mine who's still a touring artist and DJ, John Muckman.
Okay.
Still an electronic artist doing his thing in that space. So we jumped in the studio together, made a body of music that resonates with different parts of the system, parts of the energetic system, but made it quite electronic and interesting. And then this pod was a shorter version of that, where I narrate an experience where people could go into the pod for 30 minutes, shut off from the world, and go through quite an interesting breathwork experience that isn't as passive as our traditional meditation, which can be just quite stillness. We're actually activating the body. We are inducing this kind of charged up state to really chill us out. So people will have quite profound experiences in the pod. So that's what we had last year, the beginning of this year. It was in Brown's East store for 3 months, January, February, March. And then from that, we thought, well, that was great. And the feedback was really strong. Let's just get a pod and add it to the sort of plan of this year. Yeah. And then recently, the ones you would have seen on Instagram was Google's design agencies. Google as a project for their design agencies across London, put the pods in these different office spaces. We tweaked it slightly, just the timing, so it would fit this 30-minute slot quite nicely. It was a 25-minute experience, and it was amazing. Really, really, really fun experience for people, quite out there, because it's like I said, it's not as passive and still as maybe your traditional meditation. Parts of it we super ventilate, so we really bring in a lot of air. We drop carbon dioxide. So
super ventilations are the big inhale and the kind of, for want of a better word, partial exhale that Wim Hof.
Like Wim Hof, but like Wim Hof, not as extreme as Wim Hof does. He really bringing in air. I think of it more of a soft, deep inhale with a completely relaxed exhale, but a connected breath. So there's no pause between inhale and exhale.
Okay.
Which creates a respiratory alkalosis deliberately. So we're changing the pH in our body, and the body responds in different ways. So that experience kind of starts off as more of a meditation, looking at the breath, understanding your breath. Then we super ventilate for a bit. We make some sound and movement, and then move into a bit of a meditation at the end. But it's quite far out. It's quite trippy, and but opens this door to a deep state of being. Really opens this space where people can get insight, creative sparks, really accessing that state of awareness, that being state that meditation talks about. But for a lot of us, we don't access because we're kind of stuck in that thinking mind. So this just, it allows people to rapidly, within this 25-minute experience, rapidly access this powerful state where they have this deep connection to self. So that's what the pods are. They've been cool. They've been great. We're going to have some more out next year in different businesses across London. So that's definitely a pillar of what I'm doing with BreathPods. and quite a fun one. And then the other parts of the business, well, I've got one-to-one clients that I deliver in London.
What would you say, like with the one-to-one clients, what would you say are the main things that they come to you for? So if someone was to listen to this and they were to be like, okay, some of that sounds cool, but I don't really get it. Like often the biggest thing is not what or how, it's why, isn't it? So like why would somebody be interested in BreathPod? I know that, like you said, it made you feel good. When I've done it and I think I've hit the nail on the head with it, you do feel really good. Same thing with if I've done cold therapy and I've been in a plunge pool or like whatever the cold therapy is, cold showers, etc. Sometimes you just inexplicably feel amazing when you're done. Combine that with like sauna as well, like so heat and cold, and it's just a great, you just feel vitalized. But what are the main things that you address? And then what could be 1 to 3 things that someone who listens to the podcast at home has got 10 minutes to sit there on the sofa or lie on the floor and give it a go? Like what kind of things would you do to give people an experience if they wanted to then become a client or try out a BreathPod?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. And for me, it goes back, all this stuff points back to functional breathing. How am I breathing? And understanding how you're breathing in different scenarios too. So that, for people at home, that's the first thing to look at.
I'm really trying to sit and breathe through my nose, by the way, while I'm doing this podcast, rather than sit with my mouth open.
Yeah, well, you'll find the challenge you have talking through a podcast is we take that gasp of air, talk, take a gasp of air, talk. And that breath that you're taking is the same breath as if you stood outside, stepped on the road and a bus was coming. It's a breath, sympathetic breath to the chest, moving us into the stress response. So understanding that, well, how am I breathing? If I'm doing a talking job, if I'm in sales, I'm on the phone all day, and I'm breathing like this, and I'm on the phone like this, can I switch to my nose? Talk. It's a challenge. And I noticed actually earlier in this conversation, you were breathing through your mouth as you'd speak.
It's my natural state. Like to breathe through my nose, like I'm better at it than I was. I think the last time I did a CO2 tolerance test, so I did I think 3 times, and on the 4th held my breath. I made a minute, and that was amazing because I remember when, and I try. So it's sort of why I wanted to ask you, because some of the things that I've learned with the breathe in for 5, hold for 10, breathe out for 10, hold for 5. Like I'll do those as repeats. So you essentially do sort of 2 breaths per minute. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because I thought that there would be so much more for me to learn about it. And I never thought about using breathing as a transformational experience for in your head, basically. Like I've done things where I've had transformational experiences like that, mainly within therapy, and I did more of the talking than the breathing. And I've been at seminars where I've been sat in front of a group of people like bawling my eyes out because the woman who did the sessions and stuff was just great at getting you to, and I'm happy to be like that. Like I'm not that bloke that can't cry. Like I don't care about crying. Like it doesn't touch me. But yeah, like the breathing thing, it is a challenge. Like it does require conscious effort for me to breathe through my nose. And particularly doing these podcasts, I'd never thought about it like that. That is a sympathetic breath rather than a parasympathetic breath. And another one of the reasons why I started looking into the breath work was to recover better. Yeah. Because I wondered whether or not part of the reason why I hold a lot of my stress in here, and sitting on this podcast, I find it so easy to do this. I have to really concentrate to try and sit up and relax my shoulders. And I believe they're all interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a number of things there. And ultimately what I do, if there's a one-to-one person coming through the doors, and that they can come for all different things. Could be respiratory related, asthmatic, could be sleep issues, can't get sleep at night. It could be peak performance. people wanting to get a bit more out of their body. Could be the stressed out city worker that can't switch off. All these different things, or grief. People hear my story, or cancer. I work with a lot of cancer patients. And ultimately what I do is firstly find out how someone's breathing at rest, breathing when you're sleeping. I mean, if you're sleeping, we'll kind of go through the different protocols. I mean, I won't jump around. So functional breathing, and that's ultimately why we want to get back to functional breathing and understanding breath patterns. Once we have this understanding of functional breathing, what is the best breath to have day to day? What is my best breath while I'm doing sport? And what's the breath best while I'm sleeping or at work? How am I breathing? And then figuring out, well, how within that whole space, that functional breathing piece, how can I use the breath to stimulate a different response in the moment? So this is the more pranayama stuff, because our breath ultimately is influencing our nervous system, sympathetic or parasympathetic, or balancing ourselves in the middle. We can start understanding, well, how am I breathing in this moment? How can I click into gear if I need to? How can I activate a sympathetic response, like having a double espresso, so I can move into action? Or how can I switch my body off because I want to chill out at the end of the day and get to sleep, or digest my food better while I'm eating? So if you're in a sympathetic stress response, you're not going to digest your food.
Okay.
How do I access a flow state at work so that I'm not stressed, but I'm not parasympathetic? How do we access this kind of balanced heart variable rate through breath? So that's the kind of tools and techniques, this kind of understanding my breath, how I can hack into my breathing to change the way I feel in that moment.
We're never going to get time to do everything that I wanted to talk about and that you keep bringing up. This is so cool. Because you've said the heart rate variability thing. I've got one of these.
Yeah.
A Whoop band.
Yeah.
My resting heart rate is often, I'm relatively happy with. It's like 50, 51. And whilst it's kind of like I've got a competitive nature, so I'm like, well, I want it to be freaking 48 now then. And then I want 45, and I want like 51 is good. My heart rate variability number is not good. And you're the first person I've spoken to who's mentioned that breathwork might be able to, for want of a better phrase, hack your HRV. So let's do this. I'm going to be selfish, and I'm going to say heart rate variability is obviously something that's connected to many, many different things. Stress has a massive impact on heart rate variability. So if I be selfish but also broad, I imagine lots of people listening would like to be able to deal with stress better and be less stressed, and all the interrelated benefits that offers. If a breath practice can affect my HRV and stress at the same time, which I'm guessing it can, what would that breath practice be? My
default is box breathing for that, because similar to what you were mentioning, box breathing is, if you imagine a square box, each side of the box is equal, and we can work around the box. So you can do, well, let's do very simple. In and out through the nose, inhaling for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Now, so you'd complete that, go around that circle. You just keep on going round and round, maybe 10 times around the box.
Is your aim to have taken a full exhale on the count of 4, or is it just, an inhale and exhale? Should you have completely inhaled and completely exhaled on the count of 4, or is it just a 4? So if you're not completely inhaled, you still hold your breath. If you're not completely exhaled, you still hold your breath.
Well, there's a couple of observations even on the screen. When you were inhaling, you were breathing in your chest and with your shoulders, exactly where you said there was tension in your body. So if you're breathing like this, and you're doing that 20,000 times a day, you're going to get tight muscles and stress and tension in your shoulders and your breath. So one key attribute for all breath work in this key functional pillar is using your diaphragm to breathe. So basic stuff. Everyone knows about the diaphragm. Your lower ribs and belly will expand before the chest. So we're filling up like a glass, an empty glass. The bottom first fills up. So we want to make sure we're breathing with the diaphragm as you inhale. So slow, light and deep. I'm meaning light, meaning we're not, it seemed to look like you're kind of forcing the air in. So it's light, meaning the airflow is gently going into the body, filling up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. So on the exhale again, we're letting that leave the body. We're not completely emptying the lungs. We're just wanting to balance. If you imagine the diaphragm at rest is sat there like this. And when you inhale, it contracts, it flattens, air and organs displaced down so your lower torso rises first. And then when you exhale, it just goes back to its beginning. We're not squeezing it to get all the air out. If a 4 count, you want to, with sometimes because you're breathing out and then holding, you actually got this 8-second breath hold. And you shared that your carbon dioxide tolerance, which is around about 22, which actually isn't that bad.
I did manage to get it. I think I would say on average, as I had been more conscious about breathing, when I was following the online course with the Art of Breath guys at Power Speed and Endurance, like when I was following that, I would say I probably increased it by 100%, like on average.
Yeah.
So, but like I've not focused on it as much in a little while. Maybe it's 40, 45. So, but 22 when I started.
So the test that they do, I'm not familiar with that, but what the exact test they've shown you. But when you said it was 4 big in breaths and then relax, I would say that is not a real accurate reading of your carbon dioxide response. Okay. And for people listening, in case they think, what the hell are you on about? Our primary response to breathe, as you know, is carbon dioxide. So the brain, that's the first response to take a breath. Get rid of this waste that's building up in the body. And for some people, that response can be very low. Sometimes 5 seconds, sometimes people come in. And if we take 4 big inhales like you did, you're actually burning off carbon dioxide. You're hyperventilating beforehand. So you're actually dropping carbon dioxide. So you have a longer period to store.
You're telling me I've been cheating, Stuart. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, a more accurate response, a more accurate way to do it is normal breath in, normal breath out, pinch your nose, hold your nose, and then it's the first desire to breathe. So it's just a normal breath in, normal breath out, pinch your nose, hold your nose. So you're not fudging the carbon dioxide levels before you go into the test.
Okay.
And you'll find your result will probably be a bit lower than you.
Oh, way lower.
Way lower.
Yeah.
And if we look at, sometimes people will have a score less than 5 seconds. That means every 5 seconds the brain is saying, take a breath, take a breath, take a breath, take a breath, take a breath. That's their threshold on taking a breath. So you'll find that those individuals.
I made it more than 5 seconds.
Okay.
I'm all right for that.
But you'll find that those individuals then are hyperventilating throughout the day. They're taking more air because the brain is saying, take a breath, take a breath, take a breath. And then with that, well, hyperventilation syndrome means we're moving into the sympathetic response. Our body's reacting in a state of stress. So something like box breathing allows you not only to balance the heart variable rate, but to start working with this threshold of carbon dioxide. So over time, if 4-4-4 is super easy, you can bump it up to 5-5-5-5. Or 6-6-6-6.
You said something about I actually had this on my list of things to ask you. Something about Navy SEAL breathing. This is box.
Yeah. Well, that's what they use. They use box breathing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they use box breathing before hostile situations. They don't want to be feeling stressed. They don't want to be feeling super zened out.
Rash decisions and stuff if you're stressed, and slow decisions, I imagine, if you're very zen. So
yeah, so they use box breathing to optimize that state, to access this flow state, to balance the heart variable rate is key as well. Okay. Because when as a unit they're all got a balanced heart variable rate, they can work they access homeostasis. That's a flow as a group, as opposed to just individually, because they're having to work as a unit. One looks left, one looks right. And they found that breath work is the quickest way to access that flow state as a unit.
So box breathing's a pretty good one for hitting more than one, like you get a few ticks in different areas by the box breathing. It's a good go-to then.
You're balancing the on and the off. Every in-breath you take will push your heart rate up. Your blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, blood flow goes to your muscles. Every out-breath you take does the opposite. Heart rate goes down, blood pressure goes down. So that's how you make the heart variable rate, because it's the space in between the beats. Every in-breath, heart rate goes up. Every out-breath, heart rate goes down. So if you balance in-breaths and out-breaths, then you're balancing the heart variable.
So if you were a shallow breather, that's more breaths per minute, which obviously, particularly if you're doing what I did on this flipping video. So there's video evidence of it, of me doing this as I've breathed. Right, that starts to make more sense now. Stuart, I am conscious that you and I have roughly 7 minutes left.
Okay, there's a big piece that I've not even mentioned.
I know.
I wanted to dive in, because a big part of what I do, and I'll try and give you the elevator of this, but the big part of what I do is, right, okay, well, why is somebody not breathing functionally? That's the diagnosis. Well, what is going on here? Why are they breathing like this into their shoulders? What's happening? Yes, it could be because of habitual patterns, because you're breathing 20,000 times a day. Yes, it could be because of the carbon dioxide trigger response. But more likely than not, I'd say 9 out of 10 people that come through the door is because of past experience. So this is where it steps into this therapeutic context, or therapy without the words. Because when we go through life experience, yes, our breath pattern changes, speeds up or slows down. But a big pillar of what happens is we hold our breath. And we hold our breath to stop feeling emotion in that moment. So anger, we hold the breath and we'll try not to punch someone in the face. Or holding stress. It could be holding back tears. We hold the breath to stop the tears flowing because we're at work and we don't want to cry. Laughter, if you shouldn't find something funny and you're laughing at that person, you hold the breath to stop this flow of emotion, which is just energy in motion. So we stop that emotion in its tracks by holding our breath, by contracting muscles in our breathing mechanism to stop this natural flow of energy moving. So when this happens, or when this becomes habitual, we basically change our breath pattern, because we're creating tension in our body for our breath to stop this natural flow. Fortunately, we can use the breath to reverse that whole process. So when somebody's not breathing properly, or they've got a dysfunctional pattern, I will go through deep breathwork practice that will allow us to release the tension in the muscles, which is physical tension, but it's physical tension because of emotional experience in the past. We allow ourselves to move into the very deep state and shift energetically through a physics process called entrainment, which is, you might have heard of brainwave entrainment. We basically create an extremely high vibration in the body with the breath. So any lower vibrations shift and match this high vibration. Energetic transfer law called entrainment. So it's a really powerful way to shift through old patterns, old trauma. And trauma is quite a heavy word, but I think we all have experiences that we've held our breath and not allowed ourselves to feel. It could be not allowing ourselves to feel joy when we were younger, because we're strict parents, or whatever it is. There's all these different things that can change the way we're breathing and acting and operating. And it comes back to how the brain works as well, through experience. So I know when we talk about sympathetic response, a lot of people use the tiger analogy. Tiger runs in the room, breath pattern increases to move us into fight or flight, and we get out of danger. If we switch that for a dog, and a dog runs in the room, one person sees the dog, and the brain auto-generates an excited breath. Breath goes like this, then yes, I go get endorphins and I go and get to play with the dog. It's my favorite pet, amazing. For somebody else, they see the dog and it's like the tiger's running the room. Breath pattern changes, flight or flight triggers, they feel this tension in their body. Now, what the difference is between these two individuals? Well, what do you think the difference is?
I imagine from a breathing point of view, not a lot.
Not a lot from a breathing point of view, but from a mental point of
Oh,
view.
okay, so
What's the difference?
the connection is very different. So one person's excited, one person's experiencing positive emotion, positive and Nora, whatever. Can't think of that word, but like a positive chemical response was what I was
Yeah,
after versus a negative one.
but why would two individuals have these different
Oh,
responses?
previous experiences, right? Yeah, good
There
point.
we go. Nail on the head. So previous experience dictates how we perceive that information in that moment. Somebody who's scared of the dog, maybe at 3 years old, were barked at by a big dog, and they said, right, I'm never going near a dog again. The brain connects the neural pathways, and they say they create a belief system around that dogs are not safe. So that's a felt experience. Or a learnt experience would be somebody going, don't ever go near a dog's going to bite your hand off.
Yeah.
So they create the same neural pathway in the brain. Dogs are not safe, don't go near dogs. So when they see the dog, the brain generates the stress response. Now, these are just mental, I like to call them mental tapes or belief patterns that we're holding on to. Very basic example, but throughout our life, we build these up. School, parents, religions, society, relationships, all these different things, we start creating this bubble away, the self that we identify with, the experiences that is over here. But truly at our base level, the self is actually this blank state of awareness. So as life happens, we create these experiences, and some of that is boohoo me, and we identify with that. Now, what we can use therapy, or we can use other forms of treatment to start getting rid of the stuff that doesn't serve us so we can move forward with a bit more ease. But the breath work that I do tends to shift this stuff really rapidly. Within a session, 2, 3, 5 sessions max, we will use the breath to open up through this breath hold, this physical experience that we've held on with our breath, to create a shift in the body. It often comes with a shift of emotion. So that's why when I started doing this, I was feeling all my grief. I was feeling that immediate tension that I'd held in my body. But the deeper part of that, the deeper belief system, was the stuff that we talked about. On a judo mat at 4 years old, martial artist, teddy bear was called Tough Ted. I love superheroes. You know what I mean? Like we kind of create this self. Big boys don't cry. Grief, I can deal with that. I'll look after everybody else. So that was the deeper belief system that I'd created from a young age, that it wasn't safe to feel. It wasn't safe to feel my emotion.
Was it hard for you to let go of this, Stuart? Just while I think about that question, was it hard to let go of it? Because if you were doing martial arts from before, and as you say, all of those little things intrinsically knitted into the same belief system, like that could be a very, very difficult thing to let go of, because you can be like, well, who am I if I am not this person?
Absolutely.
That must have been amazing to do. I imagine the experience of coming out the other side of that and realizing that, you know what, like who you are is still this amazing person is
absolutely. And I think for me, I was at breaking point because I was going through grief. So it was that experience that highlighted this whole understanding of maybe how my body was responding, or holding on to tension, holding on to things, holding on to my bag of bricks, which we all have of various sizes. And this is a very effective tool to empty the bag. And once we empty the bag, we feel lighter, we feel more in tune with ourselves, we feel more energized, we sleep better, we have better relationships. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. That's the mental, emotional side, but then all these physical benefits too. So that's the kind of the second pillar. I've got this kind of first pillar, functional breathing, tools and techniques to switch the way you feel. If you're not breathing functionally, well, what's going on then? Let's do some deeper work to shift through these old patterns. So the breath resets the brain breath connection, the way that the brain is sending patterns to start switches. So we reset that process. So throughout different experiences through our life, we change the way we respond in those moments. And then the third pillar of what I do is really looking at the optimum sports side. kind of the opposite from in terms of a breath perspective, slowing the breath down, mimicking high altitude training through breath, increasing carbon dioxide tolerance, decreasing lactic acid buildup, all these quite amazing things that we can do by reducing breath flow and using hypoxic training, so using breath holds.
Yeah.
So that's a quick snapshot of what
really
I do.
cool. Really cool. Really cool. Like, yeah, I think this is probably regarding like a podcast. So I had an expectation of what I thought I would get out of it, and then but then I've learned loads, and we've been on for a very short period of time. Are you at a point where you need to head off?
No, I've got probably 3 or 4 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
The easiest way to wrap this up then, I would say, Stuart, because there's always a few things post-podcast when I press the stop button to the listeners that I want to talk about. I haven't even asked. I think what top 1 or 2 things I think that I wrote down. There were some other things I saw on your Instagram recently, maybe for a future podcast. So you talked about how to help clear a blocked nose. You were shaking yourself about like a crazy person on one of them the other day, which I know if people do things that look crazy, sometimes the benefits are amazing because there are things that we've forgotten as human beings to do. Yeah. And then I haven't even touched on wanting to talk about the benefit of morning breaths, any morning or evening routine you might have, and so on and so forth. So we shall save it for another podcast.
Yeah, no, I'd love to come back on and run through that stuff. We've got the background bit done.
Yeah, and I think there's by the sounds of it, I've been spending quite a lot of money recently on sports massage therapy because one of the reasons why I've come out of practicing my breath work as much is because it was for me very centric to training, recovery, etc., etc., etc. Like, it's a big part of my life, but I'm not really training as much lately because I have a back issue that is persisting. Yeah, and it's trying to understand that, well, maybe there's something in all of what we've discussed, which is my underlying cause of continual challenge. Also, of course, I spoke to another person on a podcast, like just that language that I've used was a little bit backward. I could rephrase a lot of that I just said, to be fair, but yeah, another time. But I'll probably get in touch from a personal perspective as well. Like, it's a shame that your breath pods are only all the way down in London. I'm in the middle of the country, so it's not a huge trek, but it is something where I'd have to combine it with a weekend away. So I'll speak to you about that as well. So awesome.
No, absolutely. And one thing, I know you said you stopped your breathwork because of potential you've got an injury and you kept it as this.
My focus changed, yeah. So
because what I'd encourage is, again, there's so many different routes that you can look at breathwork. There is this therapeutic bit to clear out what is going on in the background, but in terms of a performance or recovery, if we're injured, what tends to happen is our actual fitness rate goes down because we're not training anymore. But research has shown if you actually continue your breath practice using this peak performance breathing work that I do, we can keep our VO2 max or our fitness level at the same level without training. Because ultimately what that is we can, why we get breathless during sport or why we get tired is, well, because the flow of oxygen and carbon dioxide out isn't working efficiently because we're using our muscles and building a lot of, using a lot of energy. And when this waste doesn't leave the body, lactic acid builds up, so our muscles get tired. Now, when we work with breath, you can start increasing that process. So even when you're injured, I do work with sports individuals and sports teams. And sometimes someone is injured, I give them a breath protocol, like a breath workout to do at rest, which keeps the VO2 max and fitness level up, if not actually increases it further than doing HIIT training without injury. So it's quite exciting work and quite an exciting space because you can do this low impact on the body, but high impact and high result through the breath, which is ultimately what if you're training your breath, you're training yourself not to get as tired.
I feel like what we're doing now is like a season of Game of Thrones. We are ending on a cliffhanger to make people listen to the next one. So, yeah, let's leave it at that, Stuart. The most abrupt ending I've had so far, but one of the best interviews I think I've done. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and let's lock in another date to share some more.
We will.
Nice one.
This is Dan Ball from Wellness Academy. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. You'll find a link on the episode notes. Just tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see some offers from our sponsor, Lichfield Apart Hotel. Find them at lichfieldaparthotel.com, and we hope you'll support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. Another way to support us is to answer a short survey at yourwellnessacademy.co.uk/survey and tell us what wellness topics you'd like to hear about. I'm your host, Dan Ball. Our producer is Scott Towns, created by our executive producer, Ben Heathcote for Wellness Academy.